delighted to be joined by one of the stars of the film. It's Matthew McConaughey. Matthew, good afternoon. It's very good to have you on the show. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Simon. Thanks for having me, my man.
Well, the last time I spoke to you was U571, and fortunately we don't have to do a catch-up because it might take up most of our time.
Oh, that was a millennium ago.
Well, I wonder if it not only is that true, and it is separated by many decades, it also kind of feels like a different Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, I think same one, different chapter of my book and story of life for sure. Yeah, that was 99, now we're 2012, 13 years later. Yeah, I've got some different films, different creative outlets going on right now. Got a nice family, 2 healthy kids and 1 in the oven. So quite a few things have evolved, yeah.
I don't think we spoke then about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4 with Renee Zellweger, so maybe we'll have time to...
I hope so.
To get onto that. But, it is this phrase, career renaissance, which seems to crop up time and time again with relation to Magic Mike and also with Killer Joe and Lincoln Lawyer and so on. So, but before we get lost in that, tell us about Magic Mike and where you fit into the story, Matthew.
Magic Mike, I play a man named Dallas. I am the owner and the man who runs this mail review, the hottest mail review, not only in Tampa, but in America. And in Dallas's mind, the hottest mail review in the universe. The guy's an MC, a sort of a poet, capitalist, the messiah of the mail review universe in his mind, which is pretty funny to say it that way. Former dancer who comes out in this film and has another dance in his last night in Tampa before they move to South Beach, Miami.
The audiences that we see coming into Dallas's Palace of Delights, was that a genuine was that a paying audience? Because I remember when Full Monty was making the impact that had, again, many, many years ago, in the big strip scene at the end, that was just a genuine night out for the girls. They were just there having a good time. Who's your audience in this?
Well, they had about 300 extras, all ladies. Extras, some of them return, some of them don't. We needed extras there for 3 straight weeks. We had a 96% return rate. So we had a high return rate.
Funny that.
They were paid extras, but they had a great job, and they really got into it.
And obviously the film will have a certain attraction for female viewers, but it is really a film about masculinity. Would you agree with that?
Well, definitely one expression of masculinity, for sure. One of the basic things that the film is about that's for every guy, and not just that the guy would ever become a stripper, but every kid, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, says, what the hell do I want to do with my life? And, Channing Tatum was at that time in his life years ago, and he got invited to come on and be a part of a male review. Well, making $200 a night for 2 hours on stage, you're up there as for 2 hours at least, the sort of comic adulation for a lot of screaming women. You're making good money, you're partying. Not a bad gig if you can get it. And so, this is, I think Joe Manganiello, who plays Big Dick Ritchie, had said, someone's like, how do you feel about males being objectified? And he was like, well, sure, we're being objectified. What's wrong with that? That's what we're going to flip the scale for you and let you objectify the heck out of us.
I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but your body is extraordinary. And I think you appear to have the body of not just someone who's got into shape for this movie, but someone who's been in fantastic shape for all of his life.
Well, the genes I got allow me to be in great shape, number one, and then I go work my butt off. Now, for this particular movie, I did a little extra work, absolutely. I've said this before, but you tell a man that their backside is going to be 40 foot on screen, it'll incentivize him to go to the gym. This one was like, well, and this is what these guys' job is all about. I made sure to try and get in the best shape I could,
We've talked on this on this program over the years, particularly when you had the rom-coms coming out, there would always be a poster with you leaning against your co-star. Yeah. I think you started that. I don't think anyone leant
I think
against
I did too. And yeah. I've seen many more posters for rom-coms like that I wasn't in.
And you go, there's a Matthew movie, he's leaning against someone. Now,
yeah.
that again seems like another lifetime away. I mentioned Lincoln Lawyer, but with Killer Joe, out in the last couple of weeks. This really does feel like I don't know. It's a different chapter. It's a whole new volume of your story, Matthew.
You said Renaissance earlier. I read this the other day and I found this quite clever. Someone goes, "It's a McConaughey." And I was like, "That's a clever way to put it." That does feel like a while ago, even though it was just a few years ago. I was getting offered quite a few romantic comedies and some action movies, and a lot of the character I looked at and I was like, oh, well, I could do that tomorrow. And a lot of them I said, oh, the interesting character, but I've seen that movie 100 times. And so I said, you know what, Matthew, just be patient. Let's go concentrate on the family and go, direct a couple of music videos and bide our time as healthy as we can and keep our eyes open for something new. And in a wonderfully cyclical way that things just happen sometimes, I began to attract these roles from these directors. And it was exactly what I was looking for. Yeah. So I did 5 movies back to back. And they are very different from the whatever stigma came with the romantic comedy, for sure.
And so Steven Soderbergh with Magic Mike, William Friedkin, of course, for Killer Joe, which opened a couple of weeks ago with that scene in it. Have you had chicken since? I mean, is it the?
Oh yes, I knew you when you said that scene.
Well,
we
can't
call
really...
that the chicken scene.
Yeah, okay.
We can call it the chicken scene, can't we?
Call it the chicken scene, yeah. So did you? Because I think when you first saw the role, you didn't like it.
I didn't like the whole story.
Yeah, you weren't too sure. So something switched. What was it that changed your mind?
Well, when I first read it, I felt like I needed to take a steel brush to my body and sort of like just clean myself off. I felt icky. I didn't like the world. I didn't find it humorous at all. I thought it was just ugly and in bad taste. But then I had someone read it whose opinion I trust, and I got on the phone with them after I read it, and they were howling laughing. And I was like, what are you finding so funny? And they were like, you don't think this is funny? And I said, no. And they said a few things to me, which I then sat it down, took a little walk, and came back and read it again. And all of a sudden it clicked into another part of my brain where I was like, oh, now I at least understand how to see this piece. Then I found this great character, and once I clicked into it, I just let it unroll.
We just have a couple of minutes for some listeners' questions here. Alina Holgate asks, says, recently Danny Trejo cited Matthew McConaughey as one of the few Hollywood stars who has a look in his eyes that would tell guys in the prison yard that he's not to be messed with. How does it feel to know that Danny Trejo rates you as a dangerous guy?
Well, I don't know if dangerous guy is the same as having a look as don't mess with me. Well, look, I fortunately have, in my 42 years on this earth, have a solid and colorful amount of history that I have on my shoulders. And when I'm, connected to that, and I know where I've been, and I've been in positions where I've had to get myself out of trouble. I've been in many positions where I had to survive certain situations. I like the Incredible Hulk as a superhero. Now, first time you mess with me, no thank you. Second time you mess with me, I said no thank you. Third time you mess with me, well, I'd rather not get even. I'd rather get ahead.
And one final question from listener Dave Reed. I know, Matthew, you are a very proud Texan. So of the pantheon of great films about or set in Texas, which is your favourite? He says, my favourite is The Last Picture Show. You can, of course, say Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4, should you wish, but which would be your favourite?
Oh, Last Picture Show is a classic, isn't it? I was a part of another great Texas film called Lone Star that John Sayles directed, which is a great film. And Texas Chainsaw, The Next Generation, with me and Renee Zellweger. Now, that was my second job I ever had. And, man, was that some fun. You want to see something really loony, go find. If you can find that, check that one out.
She doesn't mention that very often anymore.
Who? No, she doesn't? No. Oh, Renee doesn't?
No, she doesn't. No, not too much.
Well, we had it was a hard shoot, but we did have a good time making it. So there's a couple of classics, and I happen to be in them.
Hey, Matthew, look, we're out of time, and we appreciate you spending it with us. Thank you very much indeed. We appreciate having you on the show.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me, all right?
It's 3:28, 5 Live. The thing is, Mark, I just like talking to... Not only is he charming and delightful, but Texans in general are charming and delightful. And he's top of the Texan tree.
He is, and also he is right in the middle of, what was he say, a reconnaissance, because after years and years of the whole Matthew Mahogany business, and what he himself referred to as the stigma of the romantic comedies, suddenly he's back with these movies which have absolutely, regained his credibility. The interesting thing there, when he was talking about Killer Joe, what he was saying about his first reaction to the script and then feeling that he had to brush himself down with a wire brush because he thought that the worldview and the people was so repugnant, that pretty much echoed the listener's comment from earlier on as to why she walked out of Killer Joe. Also interesting that he said it was somebody finding the comedy in it for him that enabled him to find the way in, because again, the tensions in Killer Joe, the stuff which is right at the heart of what makes it edgy, but also at the heart of what becomes a problem, is that interplay between the horrible, the repugnant, the negative and the difficult, and the comedic. And it's interesting that essentially what he said entirely upheld that listener's email from earlier on. And also, well done for mentioning Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4. As he said, it is now called Texas Chainsaw The Next Generation, the film, which it is true, very, very rarely appears in the Renée Zellweger back catalogue, at least not willingly on her. For some, I can't understand why I can understand why anyone wouldn't be proud of having that film in their back catalogue, because it's not a good film, but it is an interesting thing to have been part of the Texas Chainsaw legacy.
But if you're going to be part of, if you're going to talk Texan movies with a proud Texan, then it seemed like an obvious time to mention it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But he's quite right that the John Sayles Lone Star, and also not only is Lone Star a fantastic film and it's John Sayles, but Lone Star has one of the best soundtrack albums. It is absolutely just wall to wall brilliant, and that is a really fantastic film, seen by too few people, as is so often the case with Sayles movies. But great that he cites that, because that is one of the real standouts. And it's interesting, the work that he's doing now reminds you that he did that kind of work before all the films of him leaning on a co-star in a film, which was a rom-com. That came with a stigma, his word.
OK, so just before the news, we heard from Matthew McConaughey, leaning no more, in his new role in Magic Mike. And there wasn't time to give you a decent review. I've got some emails on the subject, but you go first.
Okay, well, I think it's really good. I mean, the interesting thing with Steven Soderbergh is he keeps threatening to retire, and then you turn around 3 times and he's made 3 movies. I mean, just in the very recent past, we had Contagion, which was the kind of viral thriller come disaster movie. We had Gina Carano kicking butt in Haywire, which I like very much. This, as was kind of touched on in that interview, was inspired by Channing Tatum's very brief stint working as a male stripper. And apparently he originally wanted Nick Refn, the guy who made Drive, to direct it, which tells you something about the tone of the script. The story itself is terribly familiar in that, you've got Alex Pettyfer as he's dopey no-hoper, he needs some money, he meets somebody, says, oh, I'll tell you something that will get you money. At first he's kind of shocked and appalled, but then he discovers that actually with stripping comes a lot of things he hadn't expected. It comes a fast buck, but also comes some form of empowerment, and that becomes a good thing. But then also he discovers that bad things come with it, and it starts to get the better of him. Now, this is basically a really well-worn exploitation movie story that we've generally seen done with female leads. I mean, there's the big budget end of it. You've got Demi Moore in Striptease, but more commonly at the lower budget end, this is a story which the Roger Corman stable would churn out time and time again. I mean, it could easily, if it was about female strippers, be a film directed by Kat Shea. In fact, if you threw in a murder mystery, it would essentially be Strip to Kill 1, 2, 3 or 4. And one of the reasons that I like it is that those films do the standard exploitation thing of they balance all the moralising with a degree of spectacle. There is this kind of, this idea that we can tell you off about something, but we're going to show you a lot of the thing before we tell you off about it. And generally, movies like Full Monty haven't followed that route. This is much more like a film that does come from that exploitation area, in that there is an awful lot of male stripping in it, which I have to say I think is good. If you're going to make a movie about male stripping and it's going to be in that, then why shouldn't it follow the same rules as the tried and tested conventions of the exploitation movie, just because there happen to be men? So there is a lot of male stripping in it, and actually therefore it gives the audience exactly what they want, along with all the other stuff. Matthew McConaughey is terrific. You mentioned to him, well done, how incredible he looks with his clothes off, and it is definitely true that it is a film which is astonished by the bodies on display. What it also does is it gives you characters that you believe in. They have backstory. They have convincing emotional moments. I mean, in the past, I think Channing Tatum has actually, usually serves as a kind of working lunk. And here, because it's a Steven Soderbergh film, when they're doing the conversations away from the stage, that stuff does smack of reality. It does have that kind of Soderbergh handheld, sex, lies and videotape, intimate, unintrusive, the feel that you are genuinely watching real people, despite the fact that the story itself is super cliched and comes from a whole bunch of exploitation tropes that, if they were just turned around in terms of gender, you'd think, I have seen this movie 100 times before. I thought it was really good fun. I thought it was really engrossing, despite the fact that it conforms to the cliches. I thought conforming to the cliches actually worked in its favour. And good for it, for having the guts to be as upfront and celebratory and therefore within the exploitation mould as it is, because one of the things that Soderbergh does is, if he's going to make a Gina Carano exploitation movie, it's not going to be a film in which a bunch of people turn around, sit down and talk about kicking people. It's a film in which people will run around and kick people. And one of the things I like most about Soderbergh is that, despite the fact that he's a highbrow auteur and fated at Cannes and all the rest of it, he does not have a problem with genre movies. He knows what genre movies do, and he knows how to do it, and he likes doing it. So if he's going to make a science fiction film, it's going to have science fiction in it. If he's going to make an action film, it's going to have action in it. If he makes a male stripping film, it's going to have male stripping.
Well, having said that, it's probably worth mentioning the fact, in case people are wondering, Mr. Happy conspicuous by his absence in this film. It's a sort of it's my guess is it's a 15. It's not. There's not.
Yes, but there is plenty. There is a lot of time of the sage routine. Yes, absolutely. You are right on bringing that particular technicality up. That is correct. But in general, there is an awful lot of, I suppose it would be the male equivalent of burlesque. Is that how you describe it? How would you describe it?
Oiled torso and buttocks aplenty.
Yes, well, that is, you go there for oil torsacks and oil torsacks, and you get your oil torsacks and something else as well. Oh, sorry, now we're on the podcast. Can I say very quickly, you said during the broadcast bit, you said that the film is notable, that Magic Mike is notable for its lack of Mr. Happy, right? Yeah. There is, of course, a Mr. Happy moment, yes, but it happens behind a sheet and in silhouette.
And it's clearly not a Mr. Happy.
Yeah, whilst we were on the news, whilst the news was happening, our producer spoke to me in my headphones. On one ear I have the voices that I hear in my head, and the other ear I have my producer. And he said, that scene? I went, yeah. And he went, that was a Boogie Nights prosthetic, wasn't it? And I went, yeah, we both went, certainly hope it was.
So. I think it was Lord Happy.
Someone's eye out with that.
Yes.